Movie Time is brought to you by the Gateway Film Center, 1550 North High Street, Columbus, Ohio. Further details and showtimes online at gatewayfilmcenter.com.
The award-winning It's Movie Time is produced by John DeSando. Listen to the shows and read reviews online at WCBE.org.
No mistake about it. I'm John DeSando.
And I'm Linda Baas McClelland.
And there's no mistake about that. And this is,
It's
movie time.
Okay, we're doing Me and Earl and the Dying Girl today. The main character, Greg, and his best friend, Earl, love movies. And the director, Alfonso Gomez Rejon, hopes you love this one. And John, why did you pick this movie to review?
Well, Lenny, thank you. Because we have, a smorgasbord of movies in the summer, most of them Jurassic World type. And this one is completely different. An independent, kind of soft. And I'll tell you why I selected it. When I see a film has won both the Audience Award and the Grand Jury Prize at Sundance this year, I'm saying to myself, maybe I need to look at that.
Right.
So I did, and I thought it was worthy of our show. Now, Lenny, of course, it runs the risk of being maudlin, because look at this lady, Rachel, this young woman, has leukemia, right? Has leukemia. And so the chances of John crying are quite a bit on this. Did you cry?
I did at the very end. Not sobbing, but it did catch me. But to begin with, in the storyline, Greg is a very awkward, moody senior in high school, and he narrates the story. Aside from his superficial friendships, he had the different cliques in the high school, including the predictable, weird goth figure and the nerdy rapper. He really just wants to be invisible.
He does. Although it's his strategy, which is interesting, is not to become too deeply embedded in any of the cliques.
Right.
He just gets to know them. Yeah, he says pleasantries to them, and he sees himself as skimming, which is, of course, part of his personality. Right. He doesn't attach to anything. He doesn't get deeply into any relationship.
His only friend is Earl, who he calls his co-worker, and they've been buddies since they were little kids.
I predict R.J. Seiler we're going to see more of him.
Oh, he was great. He was my favorite character in the
movie. As a kind of sidekick and as a moral compass, as a kind of, just balancing. He's great.
He's very good.
Yeah.
He shows more sensitivity towards Rachel and her situation than Greg does. But together, they have made these parodies of their favorite classic movies throughout their childhood and into their teen years, and they cleverly rename them, like Senior Citizen Kane.
Isn't that great?
And another one was 2:48 p.m. Cowboy.
Right.
So they're intelligent, they have a sense of humor, but they really kind of stick to themselves.
This is the second movie in the last couple of weeks that shows young people going to movies to get to introduce them to the world, so to speak. The other one is The Wolfpack, which is the documentary about the young family, 6 children who are kept inside the apartment in Manhattan, and they learn about the world through movies, and they reenact scenes from their favorite movies. So very similarly, we find movies, and I'm very pleased by that, because I think movies are a way of introducing all of us to lives and worlds that we know nothing about.
And emotions and how people react to you and to others, but to go back to the story.
Yes.
Greg's parents force him to make friends with a classmate named Rachel, who was diagnosed with leukemia. And anybody in this situation would be very uncomfortable with trying to make friends with a person in this situation. But he gives it his best shot. He doesn't want to do it, but Mom is not going to let him go. His mother is forcing an end to this, and eventually Earl completes the threesome of the 3 teenage friends. But it's not a terribly original storyline.
No, I don't think so. And we've seen it many times. It reminds me a little bit of Juno, 500 Days of Summer. There are scads of these adolescent stories, and I'm intrigued by them, because I think one of life's most difficult passages is through that. And so many young people, myself included, and probably not you, feel, difficult to fit in. There's that sense of self-consciousness
Oh, yeah.
and that teenagers have. And I think this film really plays that very well without being, and I think you alluded to it, without being too sappy.
Yeah. No, I really I identified with Greg where I was just trying to blend in and just, I didn't want anybody to pay attention to me, believe it or not.
Oh,
Didn't
wow,
like it at
I
all.
can't believe that, yeah. And there are some great side characters.
Oh, yeah. Molly Shannon plays Rachel's mother, a very boozy mother. And
Yeah.
when she first greets Greg at their front door, she embraces him, and she has a wine glass in her other hand, and she will not let him go. And it's like, I'm thinking, uh-oh, is this another Mrs. Robinson moment from The Graduate?
Yeah, that's a good point. I was alternately uncomfortable with her.
Oh,
A
yeah.
little bit over the top in the sexuality part.
Right.
Didn't seem necessary. He wasn't responding to that. I mean,
Not
she's
at
just
all.
way too weird in that role.
Yes.
Others find it refreshing and natural, and I guess you can look at it both ways. But that's what, to me, that's just an interesting. We can argue about whether it's a satisfactory character or not, but she's at least in your face,
Right,
as
she sure
Dad
is.
is. As Greg's dad.
And then Greg's mother, played by Connie Britton, she just kind of hovers over Greg
Right.
all the time. And his father, played by Nick Offerman,
Yes.
is a slacker, tenured professor who has this passion for bizarre cooking.
He's a sociology professor.
He's sort of interesting, but you can't quite figure
It's
it
a nice
out.
slam against professors having so much time at home, walking around in his bathroom,
Right.
and thinking up these exotic topics.
And then there's the tattooed history teacher, Mr. McCarthy.
Oh,
who,
I like him.
Oh, I really like him. He
Yeah.
he befriends Earl and Greg, and he allows them to take shelter in his office during lunchtime, so they don't have to put up with the social horrors of the cafeteria.
John Bernthal plays that part, and he has tattoos around.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
And but
yeah.
but
What
he
were these?
speaks eloquently with
Yes.
the kids. I just like the way he treats them. They go to his office to have lunch rather than the bazaar that they see as lunch out there.
It's terrifying.
Yeah,
actually.
and so I found him really well. He's been in Fury and Wolf of Wall Street, but by gosh, I'm not sure you'd ever know that
Yeah, I
when you
really
see
liked
the
his
character that
character,
he has
yeah.
here. So that's what I mean about this film. It has these secondary characters who are worth watching and give.
Right. Some of the acting is really good. Thomas Mann as Greg. I thought he effectively narrates the story. He's very believable as this uncomfortable teenager. He's not good looking. He doesn't relate well to other people. He's very uncomfortable.
I think he's the new version of Michael Cera, who was the kind of figurehead of all these slacker younger people in so many movies. And of course, he's too old now to play them, so we haven't seen him much anymore. But and I think he was in Juno. Anyway, so.
But he's got good intentions. Greg has really good
Yes.
intentions. He just has trouble acting on them. So you're rooting for him.
Yeah.
And then I loved R.J. Seiler. Is that how you say his name?
Yeah.
As Earl. He was, like I said, he was my favorite character.
Yeah.
I love the squinting eyes and the way he rolled his eyes. And again, he shows much more sensitivity to Rachel. And I think, actually, he's the only one that gave her a hug. Greg never hugs her, or even there's no really close emotional connection.
There's
between
really
the two.
no sexual tension in this, but he tells us this because this is a book that he's writing. That is that Greg is writing about, and it'll be about Rachel. And he says his first words were, "I have no idea how to tell this story."
Right.
So it's a great way for any author beginning and for any young person who doesn't know how to make sense out of what's happening to him. But I agree about his being really like an every boy.
Right.
He's
that's a good description. He is like every boy.
Yeah.
And Olivia Cooke as Rachel. She does an acceptable job, but she has very little material to work with.
You're right there.
I think the writer, Jess Andrews, probably didn't want her character to become the cliche of the dying girl. But we have very little information about what's going on inside of her mind or how she's feeling. Occasionally we get a hint at it, but you just don't get to know her at all.
And I wonder if that isn't a strength of the film that
Could
keeps
be.
it from getting too maudlin,
Right.
too sappy. she's an observer almost as we are an observer of these two eccentric guys whom she's getting, as you can tell, really to like.
Right.
And they have brought to her, and they're going to make a movie for her.
Yeah.
And it's so difficult for them, and she's just kind of bemused by it all.
Right.
So yeah, she is underwritten, and maybe that really works out because Greg is not going to give us too much anyway. So we're
Right.
just not. It's not going to get sappy with
This
him.
is almost a movie as a tribute to filmmaking.
Oh, don't you think?
Because the boys love films, they love to make these funny movies, and I think the strength of the movie is mostly due to the cinematography. The stop-start animation that they use.
Oh yeah, they do.
And, you know, and at times the camera rotates sideways.
Right.
Or the shot where Greg is high on marijuana and he's sitting in the classroom and the people behind him just sort of glide.
Yeah, that's a good one. A formalist
it was very
touch.
effective.
Yes.
Or I love the scene where they depict the confusion in the lunchroom and the people just running and jumping, and the camera just sort of glides through all this crazy activity.
Yeah, there's some good inventive stuff, plus some old Orson Welles kind of stuff, some Deep Focus. I
Yep.
think We Spied.
You're right.
So lots of good stuff with the camera work. So,
Right.
so in other words, Me and Earl and the Dying Girl is not the sappy maudlin movie it sounds like, although it's a great title. But it really isn't. It is really the best of this kind of teenage angst, death
Right.
topic.
And there have been quite a few of those.
Oh, and there have been a few, and I think there'll continue to be. Fascinating time of life, one with all kinds of changes and nuances and corners, and there's so much teenagers, so much like all of us, even in our older age, uncertain about our place and uncertain whether we actually have a major place in anybody's life, even our own.
I know we still are just feeling our
We're
way.
just right. We're just doing it. So, Linda Baas McClelland, Me and Earl, and the Dying Girl. Can you think of a grade for this movie,
I
Linda?
can. For me, the best scenes were the last 12 minutes of the movie. And I'm not going to say anything about them because you have to see
Right,
the movie
of course.
to find out what they are. I think at times the clever camera tricks sort of distracted from any meaningful interactions between the characters. Because the storyline was kind of thin and a little underdeveloped, I gave it a C+.
Okay, wow, that's quite a preface to your grade, Linny.
Sorry, John,
Let
I
me
went on
see.
and on.
What am I going to say? Well, I'm afraid I am stuck in the A mode for this one. I think this is maybe even a classic of its kind.
Wow.
And I'm very much happy that we disagree on this because I believe our audience will also disagree when they go with their friends. Some will like it and some won't.